Hi, this is Graham Wilson, second week, second chapter in developing skills for business leadership and for the CIPD's similarly named Level 7 module. So the title of this week's chapter is Essential Skills for Postgraduate Study and Beyond. So we're considering the skills that you need to develop and acquire in order to support yourself through the course, but also, much more importantly, the skills and qualities that you need to develop in order to get beyond this level in your career. So let's see where we go. Francis Bacon is supposed to have been the person who is labelled as the father of scientific method. He's also the first person who wrote quite explicitly about the skill of critical thinking. And it's critical thinking which the CIPD have focused on as the key skill for you to develop as a postgraduate student. I think they're absolutely right in doing so. They align it with critical reading and critical writing, and we pick up those separately later on. The important thing here is about what is critical thinking. Bacon lived in the late 1500s, early 1600s. He came up with this statement: critical thinking is a desire to seek, patience to doubt, fondness to meditate, slowness to assert, readiness to consider, carefulness to dispose and set in order, and hatred for every kind of imposture. Essentially, what he was saying was that the person who is the critical thinker is someone who is open to new ideas and is prepared to try and go out and find them, is somebody who is prepared to question and challenge anything which is given to them as a fact, so that they don't make immediate responses, they don't jump to judgment, they don't jump into action. But once they've done so, they're able to assimilate the new ideas that they've gathered and assimilate them into, integrate them with their existing thinking. And that is the essence of critical thinking. I said that the CIPD have focused on skills of critical thinking, critical reading and critical writing. But we're all HR professionals and we know that skills aren't the be-all and end-all of somebody's suitability for a job. That's what's really important is also their knowledge and also their attitudes. Now, I've said before that I think much of the knowledge base that somebody needs for a specific role can be acquired in situ. But the important thing is that there are certain things they do need to know and they need to be familiar with for almost any high-level role. And those are the things that you need to be making sure you're developing and you're acquiring. So what are they? This is entirely my opinion, but in my opinion, knowledge, the key bits of knowledge that are essential for somebody in a senior level role, are a grasp of current affairs. Organisations don't operate in isolation, they operate in a context of a political and a cultural scene, and you've got to be aware of what's going on at the moment in order to be able to see opportunities and in order to be able to come up with solutions to problems that are going to be effective. So a knowledge of current affairs is critical. In the same way, understanding what's going on in your particular industry sector, not purely from an HR perspective, but from the industry as a whole. You've got to be finding opportunities to understand what happens. Your literature that comes across your desk every week, the freebie magazines, it shouldn't just be the HR magazines and the CIPD magazines, it should be your industry ones as well, so that you're really understanding what's going on in that sector. In the North Sea gas sector, for example, at the moment, the North Sea has been dominated by large to medium large organisations for a very long time. These are ones that are supranational. They're being run out of other countries and they're operating all around the world. What's happened is that the price of oil has dropped, the value of the pound has dropped, the industry has gone into a very, very poor state. It's very slow, it's not producing very much oil because it can't sell it. People have been laid off. Aberdeen, they say, is 1/5 the size that it was a few years ago. So the oil and gas sector has diminished. What's now happening is that small companies are coming along who are only buying a small sector within the North Sea, which enables them to make decisions on the spot, which means that they are able to be much more agile, much more reactive to changing circumstances and changing situations. Now that is an industry sector trend, an industry sector change that you need to be aware of, the kind of things that are going on in your sectors. I slipped the word trend in there just now. We talk about three different types of trend. There are people trends, system trends, and technology trends. One of the big differences that's happened over the last 10 to 15 years in many organisations is that they have completely rethought their systems. This isn't simply something to do with IT. IT might have come alongside that, but what they have been doing is turning upside down in some cases the very approach to the work that they do. It's that change in systems which is the thing that's made them much more competitive. You've got to be aware of what are the trends, what's going on at the moment in your sector, in industry as a whole, in employment as a whole, and in organisations of almost any kind. What are the shifts that are happening in people terms, system terms, technology terms? And then the attitudes. There are different people have different views about what are the key attitudes. One of the things that I tend to reinforce with people is the importance of having an inquisitive mind. And to make it sort of make sense, I suppose, I've always called it in the past the journalist's mindset. What I mean by that is that an investigative journalist is somebody who digs in, who finds out what's going on, who exposes real facts away from the hype and the hyperbole and the fantasy that some information is sometimes presented as. So having that journalist's mindset is important. It's also important, and in particular for a senior HR person, to be able to maintain a position of neutrality and objectivity. As soon as you start getting sucked in to colluding with somebody else's mythology, then you cease to be neutral, you cease to be objective, and people see through it. You lose credibility. In the same way, though, while you have to remain detached and not get sucked into a particular person's viewpoint, what you have to be careful not to do is appear aloof. Because I've seen so many HR professionals' careers grind to a halt because they have been so detached from the organisation that they're working in that nobody really feels they're a team player, they don't feel that they're supporting them, and they end up no longer sitting on the senior board, they end up being effectively demoted. And the whole of their HR department does too. So really important to make sure that you're thinking about what's the knowledge I need, where do I get it, and what are the attitudes I've got to have in order to be successful. We tried looking last week at the qualities of a more senior HR professional. We didn't get very far with that conversation, but let's just have a look at a couple that I think are worth exploring, and maybe you'd like to chuck in a few extras as well. The first thing I think is really important is for an HR professional to be able to engage in something without other people questioning your integrity. Maintaining your integrity is important, and that means not making decisions that are clearly biased towards your personal agenda. You've got to be seen to be being objective. We've talked about that already. The second quality is this ability to discuss an opposing point of view with someone in a constructive fashion. This is critical thinking. It's all about being able to analyse something and break it down and talk about it in objective terms with evidence to support the argument. But what too often happens is that the culture of the organisation has created some kind of base of conflict. And if you then come into a discussion there, it's very hard for you to remain constructive and for you not to take some kind of opposing or conflicting viewpoint. So it's really important that you develop relationships with the right people so that when something has to happen from a strategic perspective, you're able to engage in conversation with them and understand their different ways of looking at the same problem so that you can come up with a solution that works for both of you. Ask almost every teacher in almost every school in Britain and they will be able to tell you about Bloom's revised taxonomy. They will probably call it Bloom's taxonomy. Strictly speaking, Benjamin Bloom didn't invent this. He happened to be the chairperson on a set of committees over in the States in the 1980s, where they were trying to look at what are the learning objectives that come out from a school's activities. If you take a child from a very early stage, maybe at infant school, by that point they will be able to do things like listing items. They might be able to list colours, list foods, things of that kind. They have this ability, which is a combination of their knowledge and their ability to think, their cognitive processes. When we combine knowledge and cognitive processes, we are able to move in the knowledge sense from things that are purely factual to things that are conceptual to things that have some kind of sequence to them. They are procedural, and then to what we call the metacognitive, which is an understanding of things that are more generic. They don't have a concrete nature to them. The cognitive process dimension is about, first of all, the ability to remember things, then to actually understand them a little bit, then to be able to apply that understanding so that you can demonstrate that you really do know what they're all about. So being able to say that a saucepan goes onto the hob on a cooker rather than into the oven, unless the kids in family are into cast iron cookware, then that's going to work. They're going to be able to make the distinction between those two. So it's the ability to apply things. The next level would be analysis, then evaluation, so making critical judgments, and then finally doing something constructive with that information. Now, children reach a point in their development which is called the latency phase, which is sometime between the ages of about 7 and 10. And it's quite a long period of time, 2 or 3 years. And at that stage they will be doing all kinds of things where they assemble collections and display them. It might be toy soldiers, it might be shells that they pick up, it might be rocks, it might be fossils, it might be dolls, it might be scrapbooks that they're creating, it could be stamp collections that they're working on. What they're doing at that stage is collecting, and they are somehow in their mind creating some kind of sequence, usually, of that information. That's an important stage in their development. They are able to select things, they're able to put them into some kind of order, they may be able to check them, they may be able to make sure that they're intact or that they're complete and so on. But what they're not necessarily able to do is to relate them to other things, to make a connection between other things. It's then that they go to secondary school and they start learning history, for example, and they might then be able to relate the collection of toy cars that they had arranged by age of manufacture into a development of the combustion engine, or an understanding of their toy soldiers in terms of warfare, or their dolls in terms of fashion. Whatever it might be, they're able to relate it to other developments and other things. And that's all really important. When we get to an undergraduate level, we expect the students to be able to do all of those things, obviously, but also to be able to take different people's ideas and pull them together into one place. So they're able to assimilate information from one source, connect it to another, and draw a conclusion, to see the links between things in a very clear and creative kind of way. That's an undergraduate. Now, in an undergraduate's final exam, they may well have to do some kind of research project, and they will produce some kind of thesis, let's say. At an undergraduate level, unless they are a very unusual person, and they're probably therefore going to be going on and doing postgrad work, they will not be drawing new conclusions. They will be coming up to the same conclusions as the body of academics around them probably would also have got. The person who is the rare exception, who is as I say, likely to be going on to postgraduate work, is somebody who is able to come up with a new insight, a fresh way of looking at things, a different kind of linkage that enables the knowledge to move forwards and the understanding of something to move forwards. That is the kind of thing that we are looking for from you guys doing a level 7 qualification. You are working at the postgraduate level, and on the Bloom's taxonomy diagram, the top 6 skills that we've got are the ones which are over in the top right hand corner, top corner. If I can get that to appear here. There we go, it's those. These are the skills which are to do with being able to deconstruct ideas, being able to reflect on yourself and on others, being able to make judgments, the ability to be able to assemble from disparate sources an idea or a set of information, designing new things, so being able to think through the planning of something and then actually creating it. Now you might well think you've done that in the past, but what we're wanting to do and what we need to do is to up the game a whole level. So if you think of what you did as undergraduates, you now need to be thinking about what you would be doing beyond that. It's not impossible, it's just something that you've got to be concentrating on. And that's why having this breadth of knowledge and so on is so important. Come back to that in a moment. According to lots of philosophers, the absolute essence of human development is that we improve our own awareness of ourselves, and in that way we are able to develop our potential in order to be able to achieve the kind of things that we would dream of doing. Of course, as we develop our self-awareness, we may see better potential than we had seen before, which means that we may extend our dreams and think of even bigger things that we could achieve. That's all part of the process. But the hub in here is about improving our self-awareness. For a lot of people, self-awareness focuses very much on the immediate, the short term. It focuses on what we would call meta-emotions: anger, frustration, fear, that sort of thing. The kind of person who has invested in their own self-awareness is going to be able to move beyond that sense of the physical, I'm feeling threatened, to how that makes them feel, so a sense of powerlessness, a sense of inadequacy, a sense of challenge, a sense of need to prove myself. Those would all be more focused around the emotional, but the latter one probably is a spiritual one. And then somebody who has really invested in that understanding of the depth of their emotions is going to be able to see how they operate in what we call the transpersonal space. Transpersonal means if it's how I react emotionally to somebody else's emotional reactions. So whereas normal day-to-day conversation communicates about simple facts or simple experiences, at the transpersonal level it is an emotional communication. Now, the essence of love is the ability to communicate transpersonally about our mutual emotions. That's perhaps one example, one extreme maybe. But for somebody to be able to empathise with another individual, they've got to be able to have a repertoire of emotions that they can understand, that they can then recognise in the other person, so that they are both able to communicate at that level. That is a transpersonal communication. The way we develop that awareness is by reflection. It's by thinking about what happened, thinking about how we felt, thinking about why we might have felt that way, thinking about the other person and how they felt and how they came to feel that way. What was the emotional communication that was going on? That's the essence of human development, because it's out of that that we can then begin to see that we can achieve more than we actually thought we originally could achieve, and then we can work towards it. I'm going to be picking up loads more about reflective practice and so on. That comes up later in the course, but for the moment, if you feel like digging a little bit into it, there are 3 sections in Wikipedia that will give you quite a lot of factual basis behind some of these ideas: self-awareness, cognitive development, and developmental psychology. have a look at them, see what you think. Okay. So, in a nutshell, as far as we're concerned, for postgraduate study and for career development later on, we depend upon three things: a broad-ranging knowledge base, a wide array of transferable skills, and a deep self-awareness. And it's those three that we're going to be focusing on over the next few weeks and months. Thank you.